I like your scary face, giggled the alien child. The generals froze. Hundreds of alien delegates had already gathered, their forms and appearances more varied than anything Elias had imagined. Some had scales, others feathers, some were tall and slender, while others were short and round. Each one exuded a sense of authority that made the human visitors feel small and careful. Captain Elias walked through the hall with his small team of humans. They had been chosen for this mission because of their skill in diplomacy and their ability to remain calm under pressure. Every step felt heavy because the room was silent except for the soft hum of energy flowing through the hall. At the center of the room, a semicircle of generals from the most powerful alien races waited, their armor gleaming, their expressions stern. Elias observed them quietly. He noticed the subtle ways they tested each other, slight tilts of their heads, the way their eyes narrowed, the almost imperceptible twitch of a hand. He had learned long ago that power was often shown in small ways, and humans were particularly good at reading these details. He reminded himself to remain calm and confident. Humans might be smaller in size and number, but they had something these aliens did not: the ability to understand, adapt, and connect. Just as he was about to step forward and greet the generals, the grand doors of the hall creaked open. Every head turned automatically, and a ripple of surprise passed through the delegates. Through the doorway came a small figure, toddling unsteadily but with incredible confidence. Her skin glowed faintly, shimmering with soft bioluminescence. Her eyes were enormous and bright, filled with curiosity and innocence. The child moved forward without hesitation, completely ignoring the line of generals standing imposingly before her. Her small laughter, light and melodic, echoed through the hall. The generals froze instantly. They were used to formal proceedings, carefully rehearsed introductions, and strict rules of conduct. This child violated all of that at once, yet she radiated no fear. Captain Elias bent down slightly to meet her eye level. "Hello there," he said softly. "What's your name?" The child's laughter bubbled again. "I'm Luma," she said. Her voice was high and musical, and it carried a sense of joy that seemed almost alien in its purity. Elias smiled. "It's very nice to meet you, Luma. You came all the way in here by yourself?" "Yes," she giggled. "You all look funny, especially you." She pointed at Elias and burst into laughter again. "I like your scary face." The hall went completely silent. The generals' jaws tightened, some of them blinking as if to make sure they had heard correctly. They were the most respected leaders in the galaxy, yet a child had just insulted, or perhaps praised, their human ally. No one moved, no one spoke. Elias laughed quietly, letting the tension melt around him. "Thank you, Luma," he said, keeping his voice calm. "I think your face is quite funny, too." Luma clapped her hands with delight. She waddled closer, examining the human's face with fascination. She tilted her head, her eyes scanning every expression, every curve, every line. "Why does your face move like that?" she asked. The generals blinked again, utterly frozen. One of them, a tall figure with emerald scales, opened his mouth to respond but closed it quickly. What could he say to a child who was observing humans with such intensity? Elias knelt fully now, coming to her level. "Humans make many faces because our feelings show on them. Sometimes we feel happy, sometimes sad, sometimes worried. And sometimes we want to make others laugh just like you did." Luma giggled. "I like that. Can you make a happy, scary face?" Elias tilted his head slightly, furrowed his brow gently, and opened his eyes wide. Luma shrieked with laughter, clapping her tiny hands. She ran in small circles around him, giggling every time he made another expression. The generals tried to maintain their composure, but it was impossible. Some of them shifted slightly, some cleared their throats, and a few even chuckled quietly behind their hands. The child's laughter was contagious, even in the most serious of environments. For the first time, the rigid atmosphere of the council hall loosened. As Luma continued to explore the room, she approached the alien delegates. She reached up and tugged gently at the armor of one general, pointing at the intricate patterns. "Why do you wear all that shiny stuff? It's so heavy-looking." The general froze, unsure whether to respond. The child's question was not disrespectful, but it was bold. She had no fear, no regard for the hierarchy, and no understanding of formalities. Elias noticed the child's effect on the generals and smiled inwardly. Humans had a gift for turning tense moments into opportunities for connection, and Luma was demonstrating it perfectly. "Shiny stuff keeps us safe." the general finally said, his voice carefully measured. It is our tradition, Luma giggled. It looks funny, but safe is good. She looked back at Elias. Do humans wear shiny stuff? Elias shook his head. Not usually. We protect each other in other ways, mostly with our minds and with our hearts. The general's expression stiffened again. Minds and hearts? That was not a concept many of them used in leadership. To rely on courage, creativity, and empathy instead of force seemed strange. But watching Elias interact with the child, they could see that it worked. Humans were strong in ways that were subtle but undeniable. Luma wandered further, noticing a group of delegates whispering among themselves. Why do you all look so serious? Are you hiding a game? She asked, pointing at their sharp expressions. The generals froze once more. Their games were subtle, strategic, and often dangerous. The child did not understand them, yet her simple observation highlighted the tension and the humor hidden within it. Elias leaned down and whispered to Luma, sometimes grown-ups make serious faces when they are trying to solve problems. That's why we must be patient and calm. Luma nodded, her large eyes full of understanding. Then she toddled over to a panel of floating lights that displayed holographic maps of distant worlds. She reached out, touching one of the lights with her tiny fingers. Wow, can humans do this too? Elias shook his head. Not usually. But we can imagine it, and sometimes imagining is just as powerful. The child clapped and spun around, laughing again. Her innocence and curiosity were infectious. The humans noticed that the generals were now watching closely, their expressions a mixture of confusion, awe, and something approaching admiration. The child had forced them to see humans in a way they had never considered, not as small or weak, but as creative, brave, and unpredictable. Hours seemed to pass in moments. Luma ran from one group to another, touching, observing, and laughing. She had no fear, and her presence reminded everyone that courage was not measured by size or strength, but by openness and curiosity. Elias moved with her, answering her questions gently, showing that humans valued patience, understanding, and humor. Eventually, Luma stopped and looked at Elias seriously, her laughter fading into quiet thoughtfulness. Humans are funny and strong, but not like us, she said, pointing at the generals. Different, better in a way. Elias smiled warmly. Different can be better. And we all have something to teach each other, even if it looks strange at first. The generals shifted uneasily. They were frozen again, but this time not by fear or surprise. They were frozen by the realization that humans possessed qualities that their formal systems of strength and power could not measure. Humans could think, adapt, and connect in ways that even the most advanced alien species sometimes could not. Luma toddled back to Elias and held his hand. Do you like my scary face? She asked, grinning. Elias laughed softly. I like it very much. The generals could not hide their astonishment. A child had walked into a hall filled with powerful beings, and with nothing but laughter and honesty, had reminded everyone present that courage, intelligence, and empathy could be far more influential than armor, weapons, or authority. For the first time, Captain Elias realized that humans had an advantage the galaxy had not yet recognized. Their ability to remain calm, connect with others, and turn even the most serious situation into an opportunity for understanding. And a small child, fearless and curious, had shown the universe exactly how it could be done. As the council meeting continued, the generals kept their eyes on Elias and the human delegation. Luma had toddled off to explore further, leaving laughter in her wake. And the humans, quietly confident, moved with calm composure, knowing that their true strength lay not in intimidation or force, but in the very human traits that made them human. After the unexpected laughter of Luma in the council hall, the human delegation found itself the center of attention. The generals still lingered in the room, their towering figures casting long shadows, but their eyes no longer looked only stern, they were curious. Captain Elias noticed subtle changes in their posture, the slight relaxation in their shoulders, and the way their gaze lingered on him with something resembling cautious respect. Humans were small, yes, but their confidence and calmness drew attention in ways that brute force never could. Luma, still glowing faintly, followed Elias and his team as they moved through the corridors of the council complex. She stopped at every corner, fascinated by everything she saw. Her hands reached for the sleek surfaces of alien technology, her eyes scanning for patterns, and her tiny fingers traced the lines of glowing symbols. "Why does everything shine like this?" she asked, looking up at Elias with wide curiosity. Elias knelt to her level and smiled. "Each design has a purpose. Sometimes it protects, sometimes it informs, and sometimes it is just for beauty. But humans usually make things simpler. We like to use what we have carefully and thoughtfully." Luma tilted her head and giggled. "Humans are strange but smart. I like that." The generals watched silently from a distance. Some whispered to each other, their strange voices blending into low murmurs. They had seen many species before, but humans were different. They did not rely on fear or intimidation. They relied on observation, thought, and creativity. And now, this child had shown them that humans could influence even the most formal settings without raising their voices or showing anger. The council called a meeting later that day. The humans were asked to participate in a discussion about sharing resources and technology between planets. Generals from various species argued, their voices rising in tone and their gestures sharp and precise. Aliens with long limbs waved at holographic projections, others tapped on floating panels to underline their points. Elias stood calmly, his hands folded behind him. He had learned long ago that listening carefully was more powerful than speaking loudly. Luma sat nearby on a small hovering cushion, her eyes bouncing from one delegate to another, occasionally giggling when someone made a dramatic gesture. One of the generals, a massive creature with bronze plating and horns curling back from its head, turned to Elias. "Humans, how do you propose to decide what is fair? You are few in number, you cannot match our fleets or our armies." Elias smiled gently. "We do not need fleets to find fairness. We can use reason and understanding. We can listen to each other and find solutions that benefit everyone." The general stiffened. Listening, reason, these were tools they did not often see in formal negotiation. Usually they relied on rank, power, or intimidation. But humans had something they did not. They had the ability to remain calm under pressure, to see the perspectives of others, and to turn tension into cooperation. Luma bounced slightly on her cushion. "Why are you all so grumpy?" she asked innocently. "It's just sharing. Sharing is fun." The generals froze again, unsure how to respond to a child who was speaking truthfully and without fear. One of the smaller delegates, covered in soft green feathers, whispered to its neighbor, "She is right. Perhaps we have made this more serious than it needs to be." Elias nodded, addressing the room with quiet authority. "Sometimes we forget that cooperation can be simple. We do not have to show strength through conflict. We can show strength through understanding and creativity." A hum of quiet acknowledgement passed through the room. Some of the generals shifted, their sharp edges of formality softening just slightly. Humans were showing them a different kind of power, one that did not come from weapons or size, but from mind and heart. Later, a small problem arose when a holographic map of a planet's resources appeared. Aliens argued over allocations, each presenting calculations and projections with precise detail. Luma toddled forward, pointing at the screen. "Why don't you just share it evenly?" "That seems easier," the generals stiffened. Sharing evenly, that went against their usual methods of negotiation. One of them, a tall figure with translucent wings, clicked a sound of disbelief. "That is simplistic. It does not consider differences." Elias stepped forward calmly. "Sometimes simplicity leads to fairness. Humans often solve complex problems by looking at them in new ways, not by adding more rules." Luma clapped her hands and giggled. "See, I told you humans are smart." The delegates could not ignore the child. Her observation highlighted a blind spot in their logic. The humans' approach did not rely on dominance or intimidation. It relied on creativity and empathy. For the first time, some generals began to consider a solution that was not strictly hierarchical, not strictly controlled, but flexible and collaborative. The meeting continued, and the humans continued to show patience. While the aliens bickered, Captain Elias calmly asked questions that revealed hidden assumptions in their arguments. Luma added her innocent commentary, often pointing out how funny or odd some of the alien logic seemed. Together, they guided the council subtly, without force, without raising voices, and without threat. By the end of the discussion, a compromise was reached that satisfied all parties. Resources would be shared in a manner that allowed for fairness, with flexibility for local needs. The generals could not hide their astonishment. They had just been outmaneuvered, not by brute strength, but by cleverness, patience, and understanding. Humans had shown them a kind of power that they had not expected. After the meeting, Elias took Luma to a quiet balcony overlooking the city. The buildings were taller than any human skyscraper, shining with lights that danced across their surfaces. Stars sparkled above, but the city below pulsed with life and energy. "Luma," Elias said, "you helped today more than you know. You reminded everyone that solutions can be simple and that courage is not always loud or fierce." Luma smiled, her glowing skin flickering softly. "Humans are funny and smart. I like watching them." She leaned against Elia's arm. "Do you think they will like me too?" "They already do," Elias said with a soft laugh. "Sometimes it takes just one little person to remind the world how to be better." As they returned inside, they found the generals waiting. Some were silent, some looked thoughtful, and a few even smiled slightly, though they would never admit it aloud. Elias noticed that the same generals who had frozen at Luma's first words now looked at him differently. They were no longer simply observing humans. They were watching with respect, curiosity, and perhaps even admiration. Later, in a casual setting within the council complex, Elias and his team interacted with delegates in smaller groups. Luma, curious as ever, ran from table to table, asking questions and laughing freely. Humans answered with kindness and patience. Whenever a delegate seemed confused or frustrated, Elias gently explained, showing that human strength lay in clarity and empathy. One alien covered in iridescent scales leaned toward Elias quietly. "Your species, you do not fight like others, you do not seek to dominate, yet you are effective." "How?" Elias smiled. "We listen, we observe, we adapt, we value connection, patience, and courage. Sometimes these are more powerful than strength or weapons." The alien nodded slowly, considering the words. Luma, who had been spinning around nearby, giggled and pointed at the alien's surprised expression. "See, humans are clever." By the end of the day, it was clear that humans had made an impression. They had not raised their voices, threatened, or forced their way into respect. Instead, through calmness, observation, empathy, and creativity, they had shown everyone present a different kind of power. Luma yawned, her energy finally fading after hours of excitement. Elias picked her up and carried her to the quarters prepared for her. She snuggled against his shoulder, her eyes half closed, still glowing faintly. "Humans are fun," she murmured before drifting to sleep. Elias smiled, watching her breathe softly. "Yes, Luma," he said quietly. "They are more than fun. They are capable of things that others might not see at first glance, and today you helped them show it." The generals left for their private chambers, each one thoughtful. They had witnessed something extraordinary. Humans were small, and they seemed ordinary, yet their courage, patience, and empathy made them remarkable. Even a child could reveal truths that took alien leaders centuries to understand. As the stars twinkled above the council city, Captain Elias reflected on the day. The humans had taken their first steps in a larger universe, and they had done so not with fear, not with force, but with the quiet, resilient power of being human. Luma's laughter echoed in his mind, a reminder that sometimes the simplest things, honesty, joy, curiosity, could change the way the universe looked at an entire species. Humans had made allies today, not through domination, but through the unshakable belief that understanding and kindness were strengths. And with a small alien child to remind them of it, the humans had begun to show the galaxy that their greatest power was who they were, inside and out. The next morning, the council called the humans and their team into a large simulation chamber. The room was unlike any human facility Elias had seen before. The walls were smooth and metallic, reflecting soft, shifting lights. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing distant planets, vast fleets, and intricate machinery. A gentle hum filled the chamber, as if the room itself were alive and aware of every movement. Elias stepped forward, his eyes scanning the chamber carefully. The generals had gathered as well, their expressions more subdued than the day before, though still serious. They had decided to test the humans in a simulation designed to challenge strategic thinking, coordination, and decision-making. The challenge was simple in description, but complex in execution. A planet threatened by a sudden environmental disaster required careful planning to save its population and resources. Luma, still glowing faintly, toddled beside Elias. "Are we going to play a game?" she asked, bouncing lightly on her feet. Elias chuckled softly. Yes, in a way, but this is more serious than a game. We must think carefully and work together. The generals gestured and the holographic simulation began. A planet appeared before them, its landscapes shifting in real time. Mountains trembled, rivers swelled, and storms moved rapidly across the surface. Symbols indicated cities, energy sources, and population centers. The room filled with projected sound, the distant roar of winds, the murmur of displaced populations, and the quiet hum of unstable machinery. Immediately, the alien generals took control. One with long, silver tentacles began issuing orders, waving his limbs to adjust holographic maps. Another, with crystalline wings, highlighted specific cities and instructed evacuation sequences. Each general followed their strict protocols, emphasizing efficiency and discipline above all else. Elias watched silently. The humans did not panic. Instead, they observed. They noted patterns, anticipated changes, and considered variables the simulations did not explicitly reveal. Where the aliens relied on rigid rules, the humans relied on adaptability and creativity. Luma toddled forward, pointing at one of the holographic storms. "It looks funny. Why is it moving so fast? Can you stop it?" Elias smiled. "Not directly, but we can figure out ways to work with it." The child's laughter and commentary had the unexpected effect of distracting some generals, who paused mid-gesture, blinking at her small, glowing figure. They were unaccustomed to such innocence in the middle of serious exercises, and it forced them to slow down, if only for a moment. Elias motioned for his team. "We need to split into groups, observe the situation, communicate clearly, and adapt if the plan changes." Humans moved efficiently, not with haste but with calm focus. One human officer analyzed population centers, noting which cities were most vulnerable. Another examined the rivers and their flood patterns, predicting which areas might need immediate attention. A third calculated energy distribution and how to stabilize critical machinery before the storms caused permanent damage. The aliens continued their methods, issuing orders based on protocol and strict priority sequences. At first, it seemed chaotic. Multiple sequences overlapped, and minor errors caused slight setbacks. But the humans noticed quickly and adjusted. They worked together, sharing information, checking each other's assumptions, and offering creative solutions. Luma clapped her hands when a small group of humans directed a holographic river into a safe channel, preventing flooding in a city. "See, humans are clever," she shouted, her small voice echoing in the chamber. One general froze mid-motion, wings twitching. The child's observation, simple and honest, highlighted what the aliens had missed. Humans were not following rules blindly. They were solving problems. Their methods were flexible, collaborative, and imaginative. As the simulation intensified, new problems appeared. A sudden earthquake shook a mountain near a key city. Alien generals immediately activated their evacuation protocols, focusing on their own areas of concern. Elias noticed a different approach. Humans began to think holistically, considering the interconnections between multiple crises. One human officer calculated potential river overflow caused by the earthquake, while another coordinated resources to stabilize damaged structures. "Look," Luma shouted, pointing at a floating holographic map. "The humans are fixing everything at once. How can they do that?" Elias smiled. "By working together and thinking ahead, Luma, that is what humans are good at." The generals watched closely. They had expected chaos from a species smaller and seemingly weaker than themselves. Instead, they observed coordination, foresight, and ingenuity. Humans did not rely on overwhelming force. They relied on intelligence, communication, and adaptability. Midway through the simulation, the chamber introduced a new challenge. A sudden energy failure in the planet's core systems threatened to collapse life support grids. Aliens immediately attempted to enforce strict command hierarchies, issuing orders without delay. Humans, however, approached the problem differently. They discussed possible solutions openly, sharing calculations and experimenting with multiple approaches simultaneously. "Captain Elias, the power nodes are unstable," one human officer said, pointing at a glowing map of circuits. "We can stabilize them," Elias replied calmly, "but we need to balance the energy output. Let's try rerouting through secondary conduits while the main system recovers." The humans worked efficiently, adjusting and recalculating in real time. Luma jumped beside them, mimicking their gestures and squealing when something succeeded. They did it! Humans made it work! A nearby general, usually composed and rigid, paused. The display showed the humans' approach successfully stabilizing the system before it could collapse. The general blinked, wings folding slightly, unsure how to interpret what had just happened. This species, smaller and seemingly ordinary, had accomplished something that strict protocol alone could not achieve. By the end of the simulation, the humans had saved the planet from disaster. Populations were stabilized, cities preserved, and energy grids fully operational. The aliens, although not defeated in a traditional sense, were astonished. They had underestimated humans, expecting reliance on rules and intimidation, only to see ingenuity, teamwork, and calm perseverance achieve results beyond protocol. Luma toddled forward, clapping her hands. "See, I told you humans are amazing," she giggled. Elias lifted her slightly, smiling warmly. "Yes, Luma, today humans showed the galaxy something very important. Courage, intelligence, and teamwork can succeed where power alone cannot." The generals, usually proud and unyielding, now regarded the humans with respect. They remained silent for a moment, processing the implications. One of the alien leaders with translucent wings finally spoke. "This approach is different. We have relied on strength and procedure, yet humans achieve a success without aggression. It is remarkable." Elias bowed slightly. "We believe every species has strengths. Humans happen to excel at adaptability, observation, and cooperation. And sometimes even a small voice, like Luma's, can help us see solutions we might otherwise miss." The generals remained thoughtful, realizing that humans had not simply completed the simulation. They had taught a lesson without intending to. The child's laughter, curiosity, and fearless honesty had softened the tension, reminding the galaxy that even the smallest beings could make a big difference. Later, as the humans exited the simulation chamber, Luma bounced beside Elias. "Do you think the aliens will like humans now?" she asked, her glow flickering softly with excitement. "They already do," Elias said. "Sometimes it takes more than skill or strategy. Sometimes it takes showing courage, calmness, and understanding, even when the situation seems impossible." As they walked through the corridors, the generals quietly observed. Some lingered behind, discussing in hushed tones how humans had approached the challenge. They could not deny the effectiveness of the methods. The humans had succeeded not through raw power, but through creativity, adaptability, and teamwork. That evening, a reception was held in the council's observation deck. Delegates from every species gathered, discussing the day's events and the remarkable human performance. Luma sat on Elia's lap, glowing faintly and pointing at holographic projections with delight. "Humans are funny, but they are also very clever," she said with a grin. One of the generals, the massive bronze-plated one from the previous day, approached quietly. "Captain Elias, your species, I underestimated you. Your calmness, your coordination, it is inspiring. Perhaps we have judged humans too quickly." Elias smiled politely. "Humans often surprise others by thinking differently, by being patient and observing carefully. We do not need to dominate to achieve results." The general nodded slowly, clearly impressed. "And the child, she is extraordinary as well. Her honesty is refreshing." Luma giggled and waved at him. "Hello, I like your shiny horns." The general froze, then slowly allowed a small smile. Even centuries of tradition and authority could not withstand the simple, fearless joy of a child. Luma's laughter had not only entertained, but had also revealed the strength humans carried within. Courage, creativity, empathy, and the ability to see solutions where others saw only obstacles. As the stars twinkled above the city beyond the observation deck, Elias reflected quietly. Humans had faced a challenge that could have been overwhelming, yet they had succeeded through their uniquely human traits. And through the laughter of a small alien child, they had demonstrated to the galaxy that true strength was measured not by weapons or fear, but by mind, heart, and courage. The Council had begun to change its view of humans. What had started as curiosity, perhaps even skepticism, had turned into respect. The humans had not only succeeded in the simulation, they had left an impression that would last long after the day was over. Luma yawned, snuggling against Elia's shoulder as the reception continued around them. "Humans are the best," she murmured before her eyelids closed. "Yes, Luma," Elias whispered. "But we still have much to learn too. That is what makes humans human." And as the galaxy's delegates observed silently, The truth became clear. The humans were extraordinary, not in spite of their size or seeming ordinariness, but because of their curiosity, courage, intelligence, and ability to connect. Even the smallest among them, a glowing, giggling alien child, had shown that the universe could be changed by laughter, insight, and understanding. The council chamber was quiet that morning, but the air was filled with anticipation. Word of the humans' success in the simulation had spread quickly. Delegates from every corner of the galaxy whispered in the corridors about their unexpected performance. Captain Elias and his team arrived, calm and composed as if nothing extraordinary had happened, though every eye in the chamber was on them. Luma glowed softly, toddling beside Elias and waving at the delegates. "Look, humans are here again," she giggled. Her laughter carried across the room, drawing smiles even from the most serious generals. Elias bent slightly to her height, whispering, "Stay close, Luma. Today is important." The council began with formal announcements, but this time there was a subtle difference. The generals who had once viewed humans with skepticism now looked upon them with a mixture of curiosity and respect. Their expressions, once sharp and commanding, softened as they considered the implications of human ingenuity, courage, and adaptability. One of the senior generals, a tall figure with wings that shimmered like crystal, addressed the council. "Today, we recognize the humans not as newcomers or observers, but as valuable allies. Their approach to problem-solving, calm, thoughtful, and collaborative, has shown us strengths we had underestimated." Elias nodded humbly. "Thank you. Humans believe in cooperation and understanding. We hope to continue sharing knowledge, ideas, and solutions with all species here." Luma clapped her hands, her excitement evident. "They like us. Humans are awesome." Her innocent voice drew laughter from nearby delegates, easing the formality of the moment. The generals froze briefly, unsure how to respond to such unabashed joy in a serious setting, but no one scolded her. In fact, her presence reminded everyone that even in formal ceremonies, human qualities, laughter, joy, and curiosity, could inspire connection. The council continued, detailing plans for future collaboration. Aliens would share resources, technology, and knowledge with human representatives. In return, humans would contribute their unique perspectives on problem-solving, observation, and adaptability. The arrangements were carefully outlined, but Elias and his team noticed a subtle shift. The aliens now sought advice, guidance, and input from humans rather than dictating terms. Luma bounced excitedly beside him. "Humans are really important now," she whispered. Elias smiled, understanding that her observation was correct. Humans had earned respect not through force, not through intimidation, but through qualities deeply rooted in their nature: intelligence, empathy, courage, and creativity. After the formalities, Elias guided his team to a quieter observation area overlooking the city. The alien architecture shimmered under the soft glow of artificial lights, reflecting across canals and spires that seemed to float in midair. Luma's gaze was wide with wonder. "It's so pretty," she said, spinning slightly. "Humans need to make cities like this too." Elias laughed. "Perhaps someday, Luma. For now, we can learn from each other." A group of generals approached, moving cautiously. The bronze-plated general from the simulation bowed slightly. "Captain Elias, your species, we admit we misjudged you. The humans' calmness, teamwork, and courage have shown us strengths we had not anticipated. Even a child, small as she is, can reveal truths we elders take centuries to understand." Luma giggled, looking up at the general. "I told you humans are clever." The generals froze again, this time in silent acknowledgement. They had witnessed humans face challenges that tested not just intellect, but empathy and composure under pressure. And they had seen how even the smallest, simplest perspectives, like Luma's laughter and observations, could reveal solutions to problems that no protocol or strategy alone could solve. One of the crystalline-winged generals stepped forward. "Your team, they do not act like other species. They do not seek to dominate or intimidate, yet they succeed where we would expect struggle and conflict. How do you accomplish this?" Elias smiled softly. "We observe, we listen, and we adapt. We work together and consider perspectives beyond our own. Sometimes the simplest approach, guided by patience and understanding, is the most effective." The general nodded thoughtfully. "And courage, it is quiet yet undeniable. Humans possess a bravery that does not seek reward or recognition. It is remarkable." Luma leaned against Elias, glowing softly. Humans are the best, Captain Elias, don't forget it. Elias ruffled her hair gently. I won't forget, Luma. But remember, humans are always learning too. That is part of what makes them strong. The council concluded with a ceremonial gesture. A holographic representation of a galaxy appeared above the chamber. Each planet touched by the humans' efforts during the simulation glowed warmly. Delegates from other species reached out, linking energy streams with the humans, symbolizing cooperation and shared responsibility. The gesture was simple, but it carried immense meaning. Humans were no longer outsiders, they were partners. As the ceremony ended, Elias and his team walked through the hall, noticing delegates from various species approaching them. Some asked questions, others offered suggestions, and a few simply expressed admiration. Luma toddled ahead, pointing at holographic projections and giggling. Her laughter reminded everyone that courage and curiosity were not bound by size or age. Later, in a more private setting, Elias reflected on the events of the past days. Humans had arrived as observers, cautious and aware of their smaller presence among the galaxy's powerful species. Yet they had demonstrated qualities that none of the generals had expected. Through patience, empathy, intelligence, and creativity, they had not only succeeded but had earned trust and respect across multiple species. Luma, now sitting quietly in his lap, whispered, "Do you think they will remember us?" "They already do," Elias replied softly. "They will remember the humans who stayed calm, who worked together, and who listened. And they will remember you, Luma, who reminded everyone that even small voices can reveal great truths." Outside, the city glittered under the artificial lights. The rivers reflected the towers, and the sky was filled with stars that shone even brighter in the clear atmosphere. Humans had learned much, and the galaxy had learned to recognize the value of their unique abilities. For the first time, many species began to see humans not as fragile, inexperienced newcomers, but as innovative, resilient, and extraordinary allies. Throughout the evening, discussions continued in informal settings. Delegates shared stories of their planets, and humans offered observations, questions, and insights. Luma's laughter echoed softly in the background, a reminder that even innocence could teach lessons of courage, creativity, and empathy. Generals who had once frozen at a child's words now smiled and even laughed quietly themselves. They had learned humility, patience, and the value of seeing the universe through a different lens. As the council prepared to adjourn, Elias and his team were invited to speak briefly. "The humans have learned much from you," Elias said, his voice calm but firm. "And in turn, we hope that our actions have shown the value of cooperation, observation, and creativity. Strength does not always come from size, weapons, or intimidation. Sometimes it comes from courage, patience, and understanding. These are qualities that every species can embrace." A hush fell over the room. The generals and delegates, though formal, seemed moved. Even the most proud and rigid among them understood the truth in his words. Humans had succeeded not by demanding respect, but by earning it through integrity, intelligence, and heart. After the speech, Luma yawned and nestled against Elias. "Humans are really amazing," she murmured, eyes closing. "I hope everyone remembers." Elias smiled. "They will, Luma, and one day they will see even more." The council chamber slowly emptied, but the impression humans had made lingered. The galaxy had witnessed courage without violence, creativity without arrogance, and leadership without intimidation. It was a subtle power, but one that had earned humans respect, trust, and admiration. As Elias carried Luma back to their quarters, he reflected on the lessons of the past days. Humans were extraordinary, not because they were the strongest or the most feared, but because they could adapt, observe, and connect in ways that other species often overlooked. A child's laughter had reminded them of this truth. Later that night, Elias looked out at the star-filled sky. The galaxy stretched endlessly before him, filled with worlds, civilizations, and challenges. Yet for the first time, he felt a quiet confidence. Humans had begun their journey not as conquerors, but as partners, innovators, and beacons of curiosity and courage. Their path would not always be easy, but it would always be guided by the very qualities that made them human. Luma, sleeping peacefully in his arms, seemed to glow softly in the starlight. Her laughter, her innocence, and her fearless curiosity had left a mark on every general, every delegate, and every observer. In a universe filled with power struggles and rigid hierarchies, Humans had shown that the true measure of strength was not fear or force, but heart, mind, and courage. And as the stars twinkled across the sky, Elias knew one thing for certain. The galaxy would never see humans the same way again. They had earned their place, not through domination, but through understanding, resilience, and the quiet power of being extraordinary. For humans, and for a small, giggling alien child named Luma, the future was bright and filled with possibilities that no species had yet imagined.